Most people assume that rice, potatoes, pasta, oats, and bread are digested in exactly the same way by their bodies each and every time they consume them. However, the way you prepare, chill, and preserve these carbohydrate rich foods can actually modify a portion of their internal molecular architecture, which in turn influences how your system processes them. So, when you apply heat to a starchy food, the combination of thermal energy and moisture causes the starch granules to absorb water, swell, and become soft through a well known transformation called gelatinization. This process renders that starch much more accessible to your digestive enzymes, which can then rapidly break it down into glucose molecules for quick absorption. But then, if you take that same cooked food and place it in a refrigerator for a period of several hours or let it sit overnight, an entirely different series of events begins to unfold. During this cooling phase, a fraction of those starch molecules start to realign and recrystallize into a denser, more compact configuration through a phenomenon known as retrogradation. This reorganized and tightly packed starch becomes significantly harder for the enzymatic activity in your small intestine to dismantle and absorb. As a consequence, a certain amount of it is converted into what nutrition scientists refer to as resistant starch. It earns this name precisely because it successfully resists the standard digestive process. Rather than all of that starch being rapidly hydrolyzed into sugar and flooding into your circulatory system, a specific portion continues its journey onward into your large intestine. There, it begins to function in a manner remarkably similar to fermentable dietary fiber. This is precisely where the narrative takes a profoundly significant turn for your gastrointestinal health. An immense population of microscopic organisms resides within your digestive tract, and many of the beneficial bacterial species that call your gut home are capable of fermenting this resistant starch, converting it into short chain fatty acids, with butyrate being one of the most notable and important among them. Butyrate serves as a primary and highly preferred fuel source for colonocytes, which are the specialized cells that form the epithelial lining of your colon. These particular cells construct a crucial and protective shield that separates the contents passing through your intestines from the rest of your internal physiological systems. When these colonocytes are adequately nourished with butyrate, they are much more effective at preserving the tight junction proteins that play a pivotal role in regulating exactly which substances are permitted to cross the intestinal barrier. This is precisely the reason why resistant starch can be so valuable for promoting the healing, fortification, and ongoing maintenance of your gut's protective lining. You are not simply enjoying leftovers that have been chilled. You are actively nourishing a community of microbes that generate essential fuel for the very cells that stand guard over the interior surfaces of your intestinal tract. Furthermore, butyrate contributes to fostering a more favorable and balanced environment within the colon and carries out a crucial function in modulating both inflammatory pathways and immune system signaling. A substantial portion of your body's overall immune activity is intimately linked to the digestive system because the intestinal lining is constantly tasked with the complex job of differentiating between beneficial nutrients, friendly commensal bacteria, harmful pathogenic microorganisms, and various foreign substances that may be present. By reinforcing the integrity of that barrier and supporting the beneficial microbial populations that reside alongside it, the immune system is enabled to function in a much more measured, coordinated, and effective manner. You see, resistant starch also has the potential to enhance the way your body manages and regulates blood sugar levels. Freshly cooked, piping hot starch is generally quite easy for your digestive enzymes to break down, which means more glucose can enter the bloodstream at a relatively swift pace. But once that starch has been subjected to cooking, cooling, and the retrogradation process, a significant fraction becomes less available for rapid digestion and subsequent absorption. This translates to a noticeably smaller spike in blood glucose and a lower insulin demand after your meal compared to consuming the very same food while it is still freshly prepared and steaming hot. This does not mean that all the carbohydrates in that food are eliminated, nor does it magically transform a generous bowl of rice or pasta into a calorie-free item, but it certainly can alter the way a meaningful portion of that starch is handled by your internal systems. There is another highly valuable advantage that deserves attention. Resistant starch also lends meaningful support to weight management efforts. Your digestive tract lacks the specific enzymes required to completely break down that resistant portion within the small intestine. As a result, that resistant fraction is not promptly absorbed as glucose in the way that ordinary, easily digestible starch is. Regular, fully digestible starch offers about 4 calories per gram, whereas resistant starch generally provides significantly fewer usable calories, since a large portion of it travels all the way to the colon before being fermented by your gut bacteria. It would not be accurate to say it contains 0 calories, because your body does absorb some energy derived from the short-chain fatty acids that are produced through bacterial fermentation. However, the total caloric extraction from that resistant portion is notably reduced. In addition to this caloric benefit, resistant starch also contributes to prolonged feelings of fullness and satiety, encourages a more stable glucose and insulin reaction, and makes it easier to manage hunger pangs, cravings, and appropriate serving sizes. Over an extended period, these combined effects can significantly aid weight loss when this approach is integrated with reasonable portion control, consistent physical activity, sufficient protein intake, and an overall balanced and health-conscious dietary pattern. So let us get into the precise, actionable steps you can take to implement this strategy effectively. You will begin by cooking your rice, potatoes, pasta, or oats in your usual manner. Once the cooking process is complete, do not leave the food sitting out at room temperature for an extended duration. Instead, transfer it into a shallow container, which promotes faster and more uniform cooling. Then, place it into the refrigerator within about 2 hours of finishing the cooking process. Allow it to remain refrigerated for several hours, and ideally, leave it there overnight to maximize the retrogradation effect. When the next day arrives, you have 2 options. You may enjoy the food cold, which works wonderfully for dishes like potato salad or pasta salad, or you can reheat it thoroughly until it is piping hot once again. It is important to note that reheating does not completely undo or destroy all the resistant starch that was formed during the cooling stage, because much of that retrograded crystalline structure remains resilient and intact even after the food has been warmed up a second time. This means you are in no way forced to consume cold rice or cold potatoes unless you personally find that enjoyable. If you do happen to like them cold, then by all means eat them that way. It is perfectly fine to do so. You can safely refrigerate the meal overnight, reheat it the following day, and still retain a substantial quantity of that valuable resistant starch. Now, rice warrants some extra special care and attention because bacterial spores can survive the initial cooking process and have the potential to multiply rapidly if cooked rice is allowed to linger at warm temperatures for too long. For this reason, it is essential to refrigerate it promptly rather than leaving it out on the counter for the entire afternoon. Potatoes can be either boiled or baked, then refrigerated overnight, and afterwards they can be added cold to a fresh salad or reheated alongside vegetables and a source of protein. Pasta can be cooked, cooled down, refrigerated, and then gently reheated the following day for an easy and practical meal. Oats can be prepared as overnight oats, which gives you a wonderfully simple and convenient method to boost your resistant starch intake while simultaneously gaining the benefits of soluble fiber. Bread operates a little differently in this context, but there is evidence that freezing slices of bread and then toasting them may also contribute to a lower glycemic response. Nevertheless, the overall quality of the carbohydrate and the portion size you consume remain critically important factors. Refrigerating cookies, pastries, pizza, or heavily processed sugary items will not suddenly transform them into health foods. You will gain the most significant benefits by focusing on minimally processed starches such as potatoes, oats, beans, lentils, rice, whole grains, and pasta, all consumed within sensible and appropriate portions. You can further improve your glucose response by pairing these carbohydrates with non-starchy vegetables, lean protein sources, healthy fats, and a touch of acidic ingredients such as vinegar or lemon juice. Instead of sitting down to a massive plate of plain rice all by itself, consider having a smaller serving of refrigerated and reheated rice accompanied by a generous portion of vegetables, beans, fish, chicken, eggs, or another quality protein source. Rather than making a potato salad that relies on heavy amounts of sugar and processed ingredients, try combining chilled potatoes with olive oil, vinegar, fresh herbs, colorful vegetables, and a good protein component. Also, it is essential to remember that having more resistant starch is not automatically better in the immediate term because your intestinal bacteria are actively fermenting it. If you suddenly start consuming very large quantities, you may experience symptoms like gas, bloating, or abdominal discomfort. Therefore, it is wise to begin with a modest serving and allow your digestive system and your microbiome a period of adjustment to adapt gradually. Individuals who have irritable bowel syndrome, severe digestive sensitivities, gastroparesis, or any other gastrointestinal condition may experience different reactions and should customize their intake according to their own personal tolerance levels. Furthermore, anyone who is using insulin therapy or taking glucose-lowering medications should continuously monitor their blood sugar levels, because altering the way a meal affects your glucose response may change your individual physiological reaction and medication needs. So, here is a simple and straightforward summary to keep in mind. Cook your chosen starch, then refrigerate it for several hours, preferably overnight, and afterwards you can either consume it cold or safely reheat it the next day. Through the retrogradation process, a portion of the ordinary starch is converted into resistant starch, and this is exactly what happens. Instead of being fully absorbed as glucose in the small intestine, a fraction of it travels onward into the colon, where the beneficial bacteria there ferment it and produce butyrate. That butyrate, in turn, helps to nourish the cell lining of your colon, reinforces the integrity of the intestinal barrier, assists in regulating immune signaling cascades, strengthens your overall immune function, and helps create a more stable and steady blood sugar response. Additionally, it aids in weight control by reducing the number of calories absorbed from the resistant portion, and by helping you stay feeling satisfied and full for a significantly longer period after eating. You are not eliminating carbohydrates from your diet. Rather, you are changing how a portion of those carbohydrates behaves once they are inside your body. Because when it comes to improving your health, it is not simply a matter of what foods you choose to eat. It is also about how you prepare them, how you store them, and what happens to that food before it ever makes its way to your plate. I hope this video serves you well and provides you with useful and practical information. I sincerely wish you only the very best in health and wellness. Please feel free to leave your thoughts and questions in the comments section below, and most importantly, make it a great day. I am Dr. Alan Mandell.